Alright, this is the first instructional video of how to edit the photos that we send you through. We generally send you 2 copies of the same photo. The first photo will look like this. This is a result of 9 images blended together. From here, what you need to do is you need to brighten the inside, make sure there's good contrast, good color. Make sure outside the window is not too bright or overblown. It just has to generally look like a good, well-rounded photo by the end so that we can send it through to our client. We get you to save it in 2 versions, high res and a web version, which I'll show you a bit later on. What I'm showing you now is this is the flash photo that we send you through. Now the colours on this flash photo are a little bit more accurate than the HDR version. The HDR version tends to get a little bit of a colour cast over it, so we include the flash photo so that you can essentially use the colour from the flash photo and overlay it over the top of this photo. So I'll show you that later. For now, what we're doing pardon me, is we're going to select all the whites in the room, everything that's white. We generally do this with every photo, and the reason that we do this is because we've noticed the whites tend to get a lot of shadows in them and they're not very even. And if you select the whites separately, we can take it into a program called Viveza, which is a plugin to Photoshop that you'll have to use. And basically from there we can increase the brightness, reduce the contrast and the shadows out of the whites, and also remove any color cast that might be there. So just selecting everything that's white in the room for now. And you can use whatever selection tool you want, like to select them. Alright, so here's the Nik collection. It's in filter, and then once you've installed the Nik collection, you go into filter, go Nik collection, go down to Viveza. This is one that you use for a lot of things. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all increase the brightness. So it's got a lot of control over the selection. So I'm just going to increase it. Now I'm going to decrease the contrast, which is going to drop back the brightness of it a bit, but it's also going to remove a lot of shadows. It's going to really even out those whites. I'm also going to reduce the saturation because we want the whites to be fairly crisp, nice and white. Okay, I'll wait for that layer to be created. Alright, so you see it's quite white now, but that's alright because we want the whole picture to sort of brighten up to this level. So next thing I'm going to do is I made sure that I have the bottom layer selected. You can see on the right hand side I've got the original layer selected, not the Viveza layer that I've just created, and I'm just selecting around the windows. The reason I'm doing this is because we don't want those windows to get any brighter than they are, because during daytime outside the window generally tends to be a little bit brighter than the rest of the room, and if we brighten up the whole room around it, then if we brighten up the whole room including the windows, then the windows are going to blow out and be too bright. So that's just showing you our separate layers. Now we're going to select our original layer and we're going to take it into Viveza. So there's a few things that we can do here. We want to increase the brightness, and just remember that the windows and the ceiling and the chair are going to be separate. They will not be included in this. So I've just increased the contrast, shown you what the structure slider does. It can give it a bit more of a real look. We don't want to overdo it. We don't want it to look too real. Just enough to give it a good crisp look. Alright, so that might be a little bit too bright, so I can actually drop the opacity of that layer slightly now. Alright, just so that it matches in with the roof and the whites and everything. I think it looks alright. So now I'm just going to merge that. I'm not. Okay. Alright. So now with the flash layer, what I want to do is I want to use the color from this. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to drag it over to the picture I've just been working on and drop it over the top. Now what I can do is if I go into this tab here, is there's a few different modes you can blend it in, and I've just chosen to blend the color, so it takes all the color from the flash shot, nothing else. As you can see with it on, it really fixes the color up and removes any color casts. So I think that looks good. You can also drop the opacity on that a little bit if the color just doesn't look right from the flash layer. Okay. So now I might even try to, sometimes you can get the carpet and you can overlay it over, like the flash carpet sometimes is a bit cleaner, a bit crisper. So I'm going to see if I can overlay this over the top of the original picture that I'm working on. So you can just see the difference there that it makes. Now one thing I've noticed straight away is that I don't think that the flash layer lines up perfectly for this one. I might have bumped the camera when I was taking the shot, and you can see there it's not perfectly aligned. So I have to decide whether or not I want to use that, whether it's acceptable. And I don't think it is. I think that's a little bit too much. It's going to look blurry if I put it on. So let's have a look with it out without it. Yeah, no, I don't need that. I'll just do it like normal. Alright. So now I just want to make sure that the photo's nearly finished. I'm just going to take it into Viveza. And these control points you can add. It's like pretty much putting an artificial light somewhere, so a light source. So if you add a control point, you've got a lot of control over that area that's selected. You can brighten it, darken it, add more contrast, and things like that. For now, all I want to do is I just want to add a little bit over on the left, a little bit of brightness, maybe a little bit here too, just to kind of lighten it up a bit, because some of the walls do look a little bit dark. Alright. Another one there, just to kind of even it out, make it look a bit inviting, not like a dark room. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now, right, so we're gonna have to crop the image. If you use, you see up the top it says 4:3. That we need to always crop the photos to that ratio. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But yeah, always make sure that your crop ratio is 4:3. Make sure that you get the acceptable things in the picture that you want to include. You can move it around just to make sure you're not cutting off something, or just make sure that you've got good composition for the photo. Now I'm just going to straighten the walls. So I've brought up the grid so that I can more accurately see what is straight. And then I've simply just gone like edit, transform, distort. So we need these lines to be nice and straight. There shouldn't be any barrel distortion because we've already removed this in a previous program before you get the photo yourself. So all you have to do is actually straighten up the walls. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is sharpen the image slightly. So in Nik Collection there's a really good sharpening program. The output sharpener, and you can see what I'm doing there. Just have a bit of a play around with the settings. You just want it to look nice and sharp, not overly sharp. However, once you do choose your sharpness for this, you're able to, once you click OK, it creates a separate layer with the sharpening layer. You can actually drop the opacity of this. If you think it's a bit too sharp, you can just sort of lower the opacity a little bit. So we'll have a look at that once this layer is added. Okay, so you can see what the sharpness does. So you turn on and off that layer. You can drop the opacity a little bit if it's a bit too sharp. Alright, so it's looking good. Alright, so I'm just going to remove this tiny bit of clock on the wall with content aware. Now I've just noticed that I've made a bit of a mistake here, so I'm just going to fix this up. Just going to select this. Just going to darken it just to match up with the rest of it so that it looks better. Alright, that's starting to look better. Alright, so that photo looks good now. So I'm going to save the photo. I'll create its own folder for this example. So folder, test, ready. Okay, inside here I'm going to make another one which is for high res. Now I'll save a high res version in here. Between about 1 and 2 megabytes is fine. That's 2.2, yeah, cool. Alright, so yeah, that size is fine. Now I need to create one that's 800 by 600. I'll do that by going in here. You'd see you want to keep the chain link on the left there so that it constrains the proportions. Alright, now what will happen is once I start typing in 800, it'll automatically make the height 600, and that's because we use that 4:3 crop ratio initially. That's makes it perfectly to 800 by 600, which is what we need to send it through to our clients as. So for this one, we're going to save not in the high res folder, we'll save it in a separate folder, and this is the web size. So anywhere between about 120 to 250 KB is good size for it. So just use a slider to resize it. Okay, once you're happy with it. Okay, and then that should be all finished. So we've included some practice, these exact photos for you to have a practice on. So if you could have a practice now and see how you go with this.